Complete and total darkness. It's the reason the hair on the back of your neck stands up when the sun sets. The home of all things that go bump in the night. The state where everything is just a little bit too quiet. Or worse, when you can hear and feel, but you can't see. Are you afraid of the dark? It's the question most of us leave behind when we grow up. Or do we? What's the real reason it stays with us, even in the safety of the modern world, without the dangers of nighttime that plagued our ancestors hundreds or thousands of years ago? What really happens to the human body when all light goes out, in the deepest reaches of isolation? Can the brain reject even the most profound darkness and become its own light source until it literally glows? And is our fear of the dark justified? Or do ancient beliefs and artistic history give us another perspective? Join me as we unravel some of these questions and more, and enter the Codex Legendarium. I'm Shelby Melanson. Are you afraid of the dark? It's a question lurking in our horror movies, and that's usually where we like to keep it, where it feels expected, comfortable, and under control. But when the sun sets and darkness creeps in for real, when we have no say in the matter, that's when things get dicey. As kids, we get to enjoy the comforts of nightlights and bedtime stories, which were designed to help make the dark feel a little less scary. And for a while, at least in childhood, it's okay to be afraid to turn off the lights, especially when someone already tucked you into bed. But as we grow up, we banish the idea, brushing it off as a childhood fear as we unplug our nightlights and stuff them into drawers. But as it turns out, that fear sticks with us way more than we might like to admit. In a poll from September, 2,000 Americans were asked whether they ever really outgrew their fear of the dark. 29% of them, almost 3 in 10, admitted they haven't. As it turns out, not nearly as many of us actually threw out our nightlights as we may have let our preteen friends believe at the time either. A quarter of survey respondents said they still sleep with nightlights, and even that wasn't enough for some people, since 10% said they sleep with the lights on fully, all night. Another 11% say they cuddle up with a comfort item at night, a stuffed animal, or maybe a special blanket to feel safer. Though, keep in mind, these numbers are what people admitted, so the real numbers might even be a little bit higher. Also interesting, men reported using nightlights slightly more compared to women, 33 versus 26%. The same trend carried over to sleeping with the lights on, 15% of men versus just 7% of women. Stay brave, ladies. So, where does this fear of the dark come from? Clinical psychology will tell you that the severe form of it is called nyctophobia, and they blame it on human experiences through history, as though it's an evolutionary tactic. They link it to thousands of years ago, when our ancestors faced real threats in the dark, like not being able to spot danger until it's too late. Some of those fears continue today, like if you've ever felt unnerved when you hear the quickened footsteps of someone behind you on the street late at night, even when there's no real danger. But in general, humans live in safety compared to the ages of night watchmen of yesteryear. So is there more to why we still feel that fear, even though maybe it's less necessary now? For that answer, we need to dive deep into the human brain. Imagine you're thrown into abrupt darkness for days. That's what 13 people experienced as part of a study in 2004. Quote, sudden, complete, and prolonged visual deprivation. They were given these specially designed blindfolds to make sure they could see nothing whatsoever, and a handheld tape recorder to document their experiences. They wore these blindfolds for 5 straight days and nights. That's 96 hours, and all test subjects were healthy with no history of brain dysfunction, mental illness, or visual impairment. Here's what happened. After just 1 day in the dark, almost 80% of participants, or 10 out of 13, started hallucinating. Some saw simple visions, like bright spots of light in the dark, while others saw complex ones, like faces, landscapes, and detailed objects. Sometimes, simple ones would turn into complex ones later, and the visions came on suddenly and vanished just as fast, whether the participants had their eyes open or closed. All 10 said the hallucinations were new to them, had nothing to do with past experiences or memories, and not one single subject reported being able to control them. So, what exactly happened here? Is there a built-in mechanism at play? Does it suggest that the brain simply rejects complete and total darkness? Or does it change to meet it? For that, we need to go underground. Darker than the darkest night on the new moon, somewhere even the glimmer of stars can't reach to light your way. Caves. One of the only places on Earth where true darkness naturally exists. So, what happens when a person spends 2 months in one? Back in 1962, French geologist Michel Siffre was 23 years old and has set his sights on exploring an underground glacier in the Alps. At first, his subterranean stay was only supposed to last 2 weeks. But here's the thing. He was deeply passionate about his work, and he worried that that time frame wouldn't give him enough time. Quote, 15 days is not enough. I shall see nothing. 15 days turned into 2 months, and 63 days of complete and total isolation. Quote, then came this idea to me, this idea that became the idea of my life. I decided to live like an animal, without a watch, in the dark, without knowing the time. In complete darkness, he knew it was time to eat only when he was hungry. He knew it was time to sleep only when he was tired. And instead of studying rocks, he ended up studying time. One of the most unusual things he found happened when he tested his own perception of the passage of time. He found that it took him 5 minutes to count to 120, 2 minutes, when the goal was to count once for every second. In other words, time slowed for him, massively. He continued his experiments for a decade. He even wrote a book about them called Beyond Time, and they inspired an entire field of scientific study called human chronobiology, or more simply, the impacts and perception of time on living creatures. If 63 days in the dark sounds unfathomable, what about 500? The experience went on to be called the Timecave expedition. And does that sound familiar to you? It does to me. Beatriz Flamini is an athlete and mountaineer from Madrid, Spain. Unlike Siffre, her goal wasn't the underground, but actually to use it to prepare for an extended trip to the Gobi Desert. She wanted to cross the entire thing on foot in total solitude. She decided caving would be a good test run for it, but her competitive nature actually got the better of her in the end, when she found out that the world record for living in a cave had already been set back in 1970, at 464 days. And that case did not include full social isolation. So she decided, quote, 500 days, just to round it up because I knew I could. I just knew it. So she descended, with only minor technology so she could communicate her safety to the people on the outside, but they could not communicate with her. She went the full isolation route, by the way. She filmed part of the experience using action cameras with the screens removed, so she couldn't see her own face in the recordings. As months dragged on, fear of the dark began to set in. She, too, lost her perception of time, and eventually began to hallucinate. After 508 days, she said, quote, for me, it was just a moment, a single night. I didn't have time to miss anyone. When she did finally emerge, she described the experience as a positive one at first, citing her clean bill of health. But later on, she said she wouldn't recommend the experience, and quote, I didn't exactly lose consciousness, but the darkness saps you of life. In light of those experiences, pun intended, what if true darkness wasn't really true darkness once a person enters it? What if it's not just the mind that rejects it, but the body and even the brain? In April of this year, researchers from the University of Calgary and the National Research Council of Canada uncovered something brilliant. You, yes you, watching this right now, you are glowing. I mean actually glowing, not just because of that new skincare routine either, and also not because you've turned into a bioluminescent firefly. But here's the thing. It's thanks to a new and very mysterious phenomena scientists are calling ultra-weak photon emissions. This is visible light we're talking about here, on the visible light spectrum that our human eyes can see. We can't see this particular glow just because it's too dim, but it is real light, and it's not caused by heat or a chemical reaction either. The researchers who made this discovery were studying living mice, and interestingly, plants. Using a specialized image sensor in a dark box, they observed the mice and discovered individual photons, particles of light, were coming from the individual cells of the mice. And when the mice died, the light died too. As for the plant testing, they found something else curious. When they intentionally stressed the plants out, either by hurting them or inflicting temperature changes, the plants glowed even brighter. Earlier studies have spotted similar kinds of stress-induced ultra-weak photon emissions before, but only in bacteria. This is the first time it was ever observed in a more complex creature. And as for the explanation, biology suggests that when living cells go through stress and metabolism, the electrons inside their molecular structure change their energy levels, and that change of state sends out particles of light. Personally, I think this has a rather poetic ring to it. In times of trouble, or say, darkness, creatures can actually create their own light. Okay, so the body glows when it's under stress. What about the mind? Another study from this year found out the exact same thing, except this time in the human brain. Yes, that's right, they literally discovered the existence of the light bulb moment. Here's the breakdown. 20 healthy adults sat in a dark room and had their brain activity and ultra-weak photon emissions measured. When the research team compared the brain activity to light, they noticed, quote, modest patterns, and that engaging various parts of the brain would make them glow brighter. For example, asking the participants to close their eyes would light up the occipital region, which is linked to alpha brainwaves and the state of being awake but relaxed, and with your eyes closed. The team highlighted the fact that more research is still needed. But if the same holds true for humans as mice and plants, our brains may actually glow brighter or dimmer based on physical or mental stress. On top of that, the 5 different types of human brain waves reflect our different mental states, and more closely, emotions. So how our brains glow could actually depend on our mental state, or our mood. Something else to note, neurons, brain cells, were found to emit more light than the rest of the body. And a different research team from the University of Glasgow found that the brain's light is so strong, it can actually pass from one entire side of the brain to the other. Let's get back to our original question. Why are we afraid of the dark? And should we be? From the impacts of complete isolation to our bodies and minds' apparent rejection of utter darkness, could existing in darkness, even temporarily, have a deeper purpose? At its most basic form, the body's inner clock, the circadian rhythm, relies on natural light and darkness. Without it, our bodies don't know how to rest or function properly, and tainting that time in the dark with light could be seriously hurting us. A study this year found that people who sleep in darker bedrooms have better mental health and less depression. A different experiment found something similar. 5 participants sat inside a planetarium and were shown scenes of a dark night sky with stars and scenes with high light pollution. Darker skies provided greater relaxation and mental healing. Other research doubles down on the light pollution issue, tying it to major things like gestational diabetes and even metabolic diseases. Beyond that, research shows that sitting in what are basically sensory deprivation tanks encourages things like regulating the mind and body, mindfulness, in a calm emotional state. Despite what spooky campfire stories and horror movies would have you believe, not all that lies in darkness is dangerous. And in reality, some of our most treasured cultural traditions and ancient beliefs about the world remind us of that. Earlier when we talked about the stressed out cells creating the ultra-weak photon emissions, aka emitting light, if you ask me, the symbolism there just says it all. The concept that something has to first be placed in darkness in order to find its own light. One of the most famous examples comes from 3,400 years ago in ancient China, the 14th century BC. That's the earliest record we have of what you know as yin and yang, found on relics called oracle bones used in spiritual rituals. The idea goes beyond the harmony of dark and light. It teaches that each half creates the other just by nature of its existence. Light creates dark, and dark creates light. In the art world, the same idea appears in a technique called chiaroscuro. It first appeared around 500 years ago in the 16th century, literally translated from Italian as dark light. It describes a high-contrast style of painting that emphasizes bright highlights and deep shadows. But a quick glance at some of the world's most famous examples, like from Leonardo da Vinci, Caravaggio, and Rembrandt, makes something obvious. The majority of space in these paintings is very dark, with only a few brilliant highlights that peek through. The contrast makes the lights sparkle, but it isn't overpowering, while the dark feels mysterious and never-ending, but is not unsettling. If we take wisdom from both the new science and the old traditions, maybe our fear of the dark isn't quite what it seems after all. In nature, bioluminescent animals, especially the 75% of them that live in the deep ocean, exist in profound darkness all the time. And it was exactly that darkness that pushed them to create a light source of their own, to become the light they needed either for finding food or continuing their species. So, what if the same applies to us? Our fear of the dark drives us to look for the light, reminding us that maybe we shouldn't stray too far from the campfire or the nightlight. At the same time, we need the quiet calm of true darkness to rest, heal, reflect, and inspire our own inner glow, literally and otherwise. And after all, maybe Thomas Fuller said it best, quote, "The night is darkest just before the dawn." Are you afraid of the dark? What do you make of brains and bodies that glow? What can they teach us about ourselves? And would you ever head down into a cave and leave your nightlight at home? And also, what do you think about the science and history of true darkness and the light they create? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you have ideas for things you'd like to see a future discussion on, let me know. And of course, if you enjoyed this deep dive into mysteries, myths, culture, and science, drop us a like and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious. Thank you.